Hi everyone and welcome back. Now Wendy and I are going to talk about something quite interesting. One of the fallen races called the Anunnaki, which I'm sure an awful lot of you have heard of, but there's misconception I'm seeing, and I've had people asking me questions around the Anunnaki, which are showing very clear misconceptions about who they are. And the Anunnaki are a master race of propaganda. They are, the tricksters, the frauds, the copycats at every single level. They're the manipulators. And they're doing a very good job of it, because when somebody said something to me and I went and looked on YouTube, and there's various YouTube things about, the Anunnaki are here to save us, and, Enki's army is back and all of this sort of thing. And it's kind of like presenting them as our saviors, humanity's saviors, and they are a long way off that. So
Okay, so let me just back up a little bit here. So, Enki is the leader of the Anunnaki.
No, he's one of, I mean, we know the word Anunnaki from the Sumerian, what are called the Sumerian Chronicles, or the Sumerian tablets. They are presented as the gods of ancient Sumeria, stroke Mesopotamia, went on into Babylon. They took on different names in Egypt. The same gods became Egyptian gods, but just taking on slightly different names. And they are beings like Enlil, Enki. Enlil and Enki are half brothers. Enki is the eldest, but because his mum was actually a Brahmin, which is a reptilian dragon, it was a breeding between two bloodlines, and wasn't their father Anu's official wife. And these things are very, very important in these bloodlines. Not his official wife. So though his youngest son, Enlil is the youngest son, he is the heir. So
Okay. So is there bad blood between the brothers? Is there
there has been on and off, because Enki is he's known as being the great geneticist. He's the one who claims that he made mankind. I mean, this is one of the Anunnaki claims, is that they were the creators of mankind. And in fact, the Anunnaki Chronicles do tell of them taking an ape being from Earth and actually genetically engineering it to become a slave creature to them. But that, the human beings being on Earth an awful lot longer than that. And the creature Enki then went on to perfect, and he did. There were various upgrades that were done to it, and Enki kind of fell in love with his creation, a bit Pygmalion-like, really, and produced an intelligent companion being. So that sits within a lot of templates on the earth at this time now. So there is a lineage that, there are bloodlines that hold this, but the human template, the true human template, has been around millions of years. And so it's part of the hybridization that this has come into the bloodline, part of the healing work that's having to be done at the level of our light body templates and things like this to clear these imprints out of it.
right? So let me be clear. The intelligent companion being that Enki was able to create was from the ape originally that
Yeah, and you can see where our origin of the
they
species came from. We came
okay.
from apes and things like that. I mean, they were literally talking. They're the ones who created these histories and these stories for us. Again, to keep us, to keep us ignorant of the real truth, which is that the human being has actually had possession of Earth, has been on Earth, for over 25 million, well, the first seeding took place on a higher dimensional level of Earth 250 million years ago, on three-dimensional Earth 25 million years ago.
So 8 descendants, and then we also have this more ancient.
Well, the true angelic human race line, bloodline.
Okay, the true
and
angelic.
then we have this copycat version that the Anunnaki wanted as slaves, and then, you know, Enki's upgraded version went on to be, when they got tired of, you know, being rulers and being gods, because I guess after a few centuries the gloss wears off it, and there's other things you want to do, and they, you know, they created kingship lines and administrator lines and things like that, and, you know, worker lines to till the fields and produce the food, and miner lines to go and dig the gold up and stuff like this.
And we still have descendants of that on planet Earth now.
Yeah, there are still those imprints that have become hybridized into the true human imprint.
Interesting. Okay.
They've messed with genuine angelic DNA, human DNA, hugely, just because they can.
Okay.
Just because they can. I mean, this is one of the things about both the Anunnaki and the Draco, or another race who are here, have done a lot here. But yeah, the Anunnaki have been very big players. And we know a fair bit about them, because there's a history comes to us through something called the Terror Papers, and these were brought through what's his name, Robert Morningstar or something like that. He's of Indian heritage, American Indian heritage, and I think it's the Hopis, from the Hopi tribes. They had contact with star beings, and they were told the story of the kind of galactic story of these star beings, and that's recorded in the Terror Papers, and it's the some of the galactic stories of the Anunnaki. And we also have information that comes to us from someone called Anton Parks, who has he's effectively telling us Enki's story. Enki is only known as Enki on this planet. Enki is really a clone, an Anunnaki clone, and Anton Parks, through a connection, it's through a crystal, a record crystal, that Enki, or Sa'am, as his cloned name is, recorded into this record crystal, and he's downloaded it. And that's called, what's the book called? Secret of the Dark Stars. I've done summations of these stories in the Lost Wisdom Library. So, you know, rather than, so they're not the easiest reads in the world, I'll be frank with you. And then we have all of the Anunnaki chronicles. I mean, Sitchin, what's his name? Zechariah Sitchin has done, you know, volumes of books on that. And we've got the myths, which you just go and pick up any book of myths, it's in there. But I've done summations of all of this within the Lost Wisdom Library, so you you get the headlines, rather than, it can be very confusing, some of it. But you know, these give us a larger picture of the Anunnaki, and then we look at, you know, the records that I plug into, and the Anunnaki were a created race. They were created by a fallen race for a very specific purpose, and that purpose was to take down Christos races, of which, you know, the human being is a Christos race. They were, you know, fallen consciousness doesn't want Christos consciousness in the ascendant at any level. And the Anunnaki are a fearsome reptilian, well, mammalian reptilian. I mean, they've interbred with so many other races. There's so many lines of Anunnaki, different lines. They would say that the pure line of Anunnaki is what's called the Jehovian Anunnaki. And if you think that kind of like has echoes of the Bible in it, yeah, they're the Jehovah's of the Bible. They're the Yahwehs of the Bible. These are, I mean, I don't know if you've read much of the Old Testament.
Not a huge amount, I have to say.
It is bloodthirsty beyond measure.
Wow.
bloodthirsty beyond measure. Yahweh or Jehovah or whatever you want to call him is an angry God. He is an unforgiving God. He demands that his chosen people massacre populations down to the last child.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it is horrendous. It is so blood-soaked.
Okay.
And
Interesting.
it's utterly different. You know, the New Testament, the teachings of Jesus are about, you know, a loving God. They're about love and light and forgiveness, and you know, very different. I mean, these are stitched together, and you know, the gods of Genesis, the Genesis part of the Bible, are the Elohim, different again. I mean, I see at least 3 gods in the Bible, you know, and I gods with little g's in them.
Yeah.
Until we come to what are the Christos teachings, and you know, the essence of the teachings of the Avatar Jesus are the Christos teachings, and these are source connected teachings, but they've been taken and warped by organized religion in the form of churches, which again are controlled by Dracos. They're controlled by Anunnaki, because it gives control of populations. You know, religion gives control of populations.
Absolutely.
Thou shalt not. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Control of the masses.
Yeah.
Would say.
Yeah.
Oh,
And it's not just control, you know, physical control, it's mind control, you know, hugely brainwashed.
okay. So where do we?
Think back to medieval times. If you didn't go to church, I mean, you could be killed for the sin of not going to church every Sunday, because you were deemed to be a heretic, and God got, you know, on it went. I mean, that they had that population marching to their orders.
So I see how this can have had us so incredibly confused, and why we can be thinking that the Anunnaki, is here to save us. Let me just ask this question. Where would be the place where we could access the purest form of the Christos teachings?
Oh, it is someone who's bringing them through now, who's talking to it now, to be frank with you, because we have the Bible, the New Testament, please, the Old Testament, utterly not. You know, look at what Jesus is saying, just the purity of what he's saying, none of the dogma that's been put around it, and you've got the essence of it there.
Okay.
I think I've done something on the Christos teachings. It might not be with you. It might have been with Felix. I think there's a YouTube up about them. But I mean, they are, and I talk about them a lot in the kind of talks I do, you know, when I go out to groups and things. Because it's called headline, you know, is the law of one. It's about all is one. We are all part, you know, we all come from the same source. We all return to the same source. So you know, you and I are the same. Ultimately, what I do to me, I do to you, and so on. And that's the first universal law. We'll maybe talk about more about universal laws at some point.
Yeah.
You know, so everything is interconnected. Everything is interconnected, whether it's a planet, a solar system, being a, you know, a butterfly, whatever it is, we're all part of the same. So that's the first understanding. And when you view the world through that lens, it looks very different to I am separate from everything else. There's just me, and you know, I'm the big I am, and I'm superior to I'm superior to dogs and animals and everything around me, because you know, I was put here to have dominion and control of the earth, which is the story we're told through the Bible. Very different. And then you know, the next thing is love yourself. You are a part of the divine. And if you can't love yourself, if you hate yourself, that's a rejection of the divine that sits within you, and you cannot love anything else fully and completely and unconditionally until you learn to love yourself, because you can't, you know, everything is a reflection of you. So if you don't fully accept yourself, how can you fully accept another?
Perfect. So I'm really looking forward to unpacking some of these universal laws with you deeper in perhaps some other areas. So what I think I'm hearing here then is that the Christos teachings can be found in the New Testament, but
They can be found in ancient wisdom teachings, but they're obfuscated.
okay, so it requires that discernment. It requires following that energetic line and that
Yeah.
buyer beware consciousness and that real like sifting for the true meaning. So there's that we can explore. And then it's very much a case of being extremely cautious around Anunnaki being the saviors of the human race. It really sounds like it is not quite that simple.
They are, you know, the planners, shall we say, the ultimate architects of the one world order agenda. If
Okay.
you think they're here to save you, they're not. They're here to enslave you.
All right, that's fascinating. So, like you say, when we hear and we were tempted to jump on the bandwagon of the Anunnaki race that's here to save us, we just need to be very cautious and mindful of the complexity actually in the backstory to them.
Absolutely.
Because there is, by the sounds of it, like a little germ of truth that, you know, if we still are descendants of the race they
Yeah, I mean, and it's
partly true.
absolutely. I mean, they are so good at this.
Okay.
You know, they wrap the truth in lies, and you know, because there is that element, people are hearing there's something in there that
Yes.
that resonates. It pulls people in. The whole New Age deception is
Like you
is
say,
Anunnaki produced.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they've done the most horrendous things on this planet. I mean, the Dracos are awful beings, but they're brutal. You know, they're just militaristic and brutal, and you can see very clearly where their influence is on the planet. The Anunnaki are much more subtle in the way they use power and wield power. And they're tricksters, you know, they're copycats. They wear false masks. They say one thing and mean another. They wrap the truth in lies. They arch manipulators at every level. So you know, a Draco will just run straight over you.
Yes.
Whereas an Anunnaki, by God, he's your best friend, and he's got the most beautiful glamour on him. You know, he's a being of love and light, and he says all of the right things because, you know, they've got access to the most amazing levels of consciousness through those they have captured and cloned into AI machinery and stuff like this. So they can, you know, they can take the knowledge and feed it back to you in a way that seems very genuine, but they state it or just twist something within it that leads you into the false ascension teachings and matrix, not into the light ones.
Oh my goodness. I mean, there's so much discernment required.
Yeah, there is, and people say, oh, how am I supposed to know? And it just comes back to grow your God's spark, strengthen that connection to source, strengthen. And you do that by following, you know, the so-called law of one, the Christos teachings. And maybe we will take time to just go through them again, because there's always different ways of saying things, you know, that we can make, hopefully, you know, it's about old-fashioned values, you know, living a good, honest life of integrity and authenticity. In many ways it's not difficult, but it's incredibly difficult
Yeah.
in this turned around world that we find ourselves in.
I think that's it, isn't it? It's that it's almost become unfashionable because it's old fashioned. But actually, when you stumble across a person who exhibits and lives those old fashioned values, we actually feel that sense of rightness. We feel that sense of, you know, their gravitas, almost their grounded, their goodness.
Yeah.
And, you know, their concepts have almost gone out of fashion in a world where, you know, you're supposed to get ahead and you're supposed to get with it and get modern. And, you know, there's a lot of people that sort of think that those old fashioned values represent some sort of, I suppose, repression. But actually, when you strip it back, they are really sound principles, and they do open that, you know, those higher vibrational frequencies of gratitude and love and joy and those things that vibrate really high.
And why would there be a very concerted effort to take us away from establishing those within ourselves and within children? Because it takes us into higher vibrations.
Oh, I feel the truth of that. I kind of, I
Mm.
kind of creeped out, but like really like eyes wide open at the same
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
Because to know that the Anunnaki are quite so clever, and quite so genius, you know, it reminds you of that friend or that boyfriend or that girlfriend that you feel like latterly duped by. You're like, oh my
yeah,
God, that was really what was
yeah,
going on there,
yeah.
you know,
They
and
are ancient, they are ancient beings.
mm,
And by God, they're masters of mind control. They're masters of propaganda. They're masters of manipulation.
it sounds like the
Been doing this an awful lot longer than we
boyfriend
have.
on acid. You know, you think you've got a narcissistic husband or boyfriend, well, you know, like, this is like not a patch on my Anunnaki.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Well, you
But
know, I
they'll
love
they'll appear as your best friend.
well, I love that we flagged this. I think it's so important again for just people to like we've said before, question everything. You
Yeah.
know, run it through that truth matrix that we all have when we choose to remember that we do. You know, doing those sorts of things is like a remembering, it's a building a muscle, it's a returning to, you know, the truth and the basic principles. And you know, not to think, oh gosh, I'm really outdated, or surely there's a better or bigger way. That's the trick, isn't it?
Yeah, it
It's
is.
like, no, there isn't. You're absolutely right to think that the things that are old fashioned, you know, I'm not talking about prejudice and all that sort of thing, because
Mm.
stuff has been around for years and years, but that truth, like you say, that God spark, that return to those universal principles, which we will dig into a little bit more. Very exciting, Sarah. Thank you so much for flagging it.
Pleasure. And thank you everyone for watching.